Hi, welcome to this part of my review featuring Unknown Armies Book One, Play. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this role-playing game, where the player characters fight the status quo while achieving their ends and objectives through occult means, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about conflict. By definition, risk entails the possibility of harm, and effort implies opposition that must be overcome. This game contains rules to determine what happens when you take risks, be they emotional or physical or miscellaneous, and the rules for how the inertia of the world resists your efforts unless you grit your teeth and put some backbone behind it. Let's talk about coercion. Events change people. People also change events. So people change for better and for worse. Coercion is this game's term for non-violent attempts to change people or their actions. If you threaten or cozen or insinuate that you can do awful things to someone unless they act as you wish, there are two ways to go about this. One is that they back down and do as you say. The other is that they defy you and face the consequences. Because we have the handy shock gauge to measure internal trauma, that's the target of coercion attempts. Every coercion role works in the following way. First, you establish a credible threat. Then you roll the relevant identity, relationship, or ability. If it fails, they don't believe you're serious. You can carry out your threat and inflict consequences on them, but they are unfazed until you do. If the roll succeeds, the person has a choice. They either acquiesce and keep their shock gauge intact, or they don't and take a stress check. The rank of the stress check depends on what you rolled. Simple success yields a rank 1 check. Matched success or crit yields a rank 2 check. You add +1 for each of your passions that is in play, and you add +1 for each of the target's passions that is in play as well. At this point, you may be wondering if coercion is worth doing. After all, you might fail your roll, or they might have enough hardened notches to simply ignore you. First off, coercion is low risk. You can roll this as a total bluff. Lie about your ability to get them fired. Threaten to murder their kids when you're unwilling to do any of such things. Use minor magic to create random effects and imply that it's just the tip of the iceberg, when in fact, no. Minor poltergeisting is the full extent of your mystic prowess. Second, it opens negotiation space. If you roll coercion after threatening to infect a guy with night terrors, you could fail or he could shrug it off. But if you then actually arrange nightmares, what's happened then? You've taught him that you don't make idle threats. The next time you coerce him, you may not even need to roll if the game master decides he doesn't want to try your patience again. Third, coercion is precise. When you attack someone physically, your options basically boil down to do harm or do less harm. But coercion can target one of 5 areas of a person's life, and just about everyone has a spot where they squirm if you press it hard enough. Fourth, it lets you feel out the opposition. If you roll a crit to coerce someone's helplessness, and they simply laugh it off, you know their helplessness meter is pretty solid. That in turn means that their fitness ability is weak, and that they are therefore less able to resist attacks on the violence meter. Fifth, even when the target resists and gains a hardened notch, you still have impact. Harden a city council member on her isolation meter, and she has become 10% more capable of running after a purse snatcher, at the cost of 10% of the social capital that got her elected. These are the same rules other people use to coerce you, so making a meter safe by getting deep into hardened notches cuts both ways, if you are willing to be the hard character. So when can you coerce? Shifting someone's nature is not simple. You need to possess some kind of leverage that makes the target take your demands seriously. You also, as mentioned previously, need to roll a success on a relevant identity, or possibly an ability. Also, Don't forget that you can always substitute a relationship score for any attempt to coerce. If you know someone well enough that she's your mentor, you know exactly how to push her buttons. Let's talk about helplessness. To attack someone's helplessness meter, you need to make them believe you can disempower them. If they feel that resistance is futile, that you're just presenting facts instead of a challenge, then you've done it right. When it comes to isolation attacks are the source of colorful words, like ostracize. They are entirely social. You convince the target that unless they make you happy, you're going to make them an outcast, snubbed by neighbors, hassled by authorities, and unlikely to get bank loans at decent interest. You are basically trying to cancel them. Leverage for this form of coercion comes from commonality. You have to move in one or more social circles with the target. Next we have self. This one's tricky. Convincing someone they are betraying their own better nature is a bit more involved than a typical do what I say or I cut you transaction. You have to appeal to the target's better nature and convince them that you understand what the right thing to do actually is. The leverage is your knowledge of their wrongdoing and their feelings of guilt. When it comes to violence, this one's simple. Want to threaten someone? Point a weapon or have an established reputation for doing harm. If you have been known to assault people, perhaps you have served some time, then you can use that. Or maybe you have an intimidating physique. You may end up looking dangerous enough to use violence as a threat. When it comes to the unnatural, what changes people most of all, perhaps, is learning that the way they assume the world works is all just bunk. Instead of a tidy world of physics and politics, or even an unruly world of Heisenberg physics and crook Jersey politics, they are living in the weirdly fair representative cosmology of a Dirk Allen novel. You could brew up weird events with your knowledge and power, and if you roll right amidst inexplicable events, the target either goes along with you, or is haunted by the fear of the uncanny. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we are going to talk about combat. You could say that this system of coercion is also a mode of combat. You are trying to target the enemy's weaknesses. You try to identify these 5 areas that I have mentioned to see which one works better for your purposes. And as long as your threats are clear and perhaps veiled enough, depending on context, then there is little risk involved. But because these 5 weak spot areas are not so easy to identify or perhaps decipher, coercion could end up being somewhat challenging. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.